the last video, we got into question endings. And so in this video, we're going to do some practice with those question endings and answering questions, while also learning a little bit of new vocabulary. So starting with emotions, we'll be getting into different vocabulary, how to say what you're feeling, and how to respond to questions about how you're feeling, some new action words, and some words for the weather. So starting with one that's been written about, it's hopefully an emotion you've been feeling a lot, and that is koviasuk. So koviasuk means to be happy. So if I was asking you, are you happy? I would say koviasuk bit. Koviasuk bit. Are you happy? If I was asking about a third person, I would say koviasuk ba. Koviasuk ba. So using those different endings, so bit, making it a question towards you, ba, a question for a third person. So if you were asked koviasuk bit, you would answer koviasuk dunga. Koviasuk dunga. I am happy. Or if you were asked koviasuk ba, is that third person happy? You could answer I koviasuk dok. Koviasuk dok, meaning that third person is happy. And if they're not happy or you're not happy, we're going to add in that ngit. So akka koviasuk dunga. No, I am not happy. Or if you ask koviasuk ba, you could say akka koviasuk dok. That person is not happy. So if you're unsure where this is coming from, I'd recommend going back and watching that video I posted before this one, going into all the different rules and what those different pieces mean. So we'll just keep going with the different sections. So after koviasuk, going to the polar opposite is ningauma. So ningauma means to be mad. So I could ask ningauma vit. Ningauma vit. Are you mad? And you could answer I ningauma yunga. Ningauma yunga means I am mad. Or I could ask ningauma va. Is he or she unhappy? Ningauma va. And you could answer I ningauma yok. Or akka ningauma ngitok. So using those different endings depending on what the last letter is. So koviasuk ends in a K. So we say koviasuk bit or koviasuk ba. When you're answering, you say koviasuk dunga or koviasuk dok. With ningauma, because it ends in a vowel, we use ningauma vit and ningauma va. And when we're answering, we say either ningauma yunga or ningauma yok. So another good one is kangusuk. So kangusuk is used to mean kind of like shy. So I could say kangusuk bit and take a second to answer. So kangusuk bit. So you could say I kangusuk dunga or akka kangusungit dunga. So remember, with ngit, we're dropping the K. If I'm asking about a third person, you could say kangusuk ba, or you could respond I kangusuk dok or akka kangusungit dok. So for some action words, for sleep, we say sinik, I could say sinik beat. Are you sleeping? Sinik beat. Or if we're talking about a third person, sinik pa. Sinik pa. So if I said sinik beat, you could respond I Inuktuuqta, which you probably wouldn't, because if you're sleeping, you're not going to be probably answering any questions. Or if we're talking about a third person, which is more likely, I say sinikpa, you could answer I Inuktuuqta. Or if we're using the negative, we would say akka Inuktuuqta if you're not sleeping, or akka Inuktuuqta. So using it when we are saying this is not happening, and just using the root word and the ending when it's affirming that question. So another one, you could say okalukpit, and this is the Kivalak dialect. We say okaluk for to call. In the Baffin, they say okala. So I would say okalukpit, did you call? And you could say I okaluktuuqta, or akka okalungituuqta, no, I didn't call. Talking about a third person, we would just change that ending to a pa, so okalukpa. And you could say I okaluktuuq, or akka okalungituuq, no, they didn't call. So another good action is when you're asking if somebody is home. So to be at home is aisima. So aisima is to be at home. So if I was asking you, are you at home? I would say aisimavit. Aisimavit. And you could answer I aisimayunga. So aisimayunga, or aisimangituuqta, I am not home. If we're talking about a third person, we would say aisimava. Aisimava, is he or she home? And you would answer I aisimayok. Aisimayok, or aisimangituuq. So changing those endings depending on what the last letter before it is. Is it a vowel, or is it a consonant? Is it a Q, K, or a T? So sometimes it helps in Inuktuuqta, if you're practicing writing it down. But if you're doing worksheets, if you're practicing writing, I would totally recommend saying it out loud, so you get into the practice of, reading in Inuktuuqta and, saying it out loud. So I also wanted to get into talking about the weather, because it's a really good example of, that third person ending being used for an inanimate object or something that's not a person. It's also a really good conversation piece. So when we're talking about the weather, a question you could ask is sila kanui pa. That means how is the weather? So notice that when we say kanui pa, we're using that pa ending, which we also use for he or she. So sila being weather, kanui pa is like how is it? So you could answer, if it's sunny, siqinniqtuuq. Siqinniqtuuq. It is sunny. If you're asking if it's sunny, you would change that to the question ending. So you would just say siqinniqpa. So you could answer that I siqinniqtuuq, or akka siqinningituuq. If it's snowing, you would say qanniqtuuq. So qanniq is when it's snowing. I could say qanniqpa, is it snowing? And you could say I qanniqtuuq, or Akka kanningittoq. If it's cloudy, you would say nuvuyayok. So nuvuyayok means it's cloudy. And to ask if it's cloudy, you would say nuvuyava. Nuvuyava. And you would answer I nuvuyayok or akka nuvuyanittoq. Another one, if you're from the Kivalliq region, you would say this a lot in the winter, and it's biqsiq. So biqsiq is a blizzard. You could say biqsiqpa. So using that third person pa ending, because we're talking about a thing. So biqsiqpa, is there a blizzard? And you would answer I biqsiqtoq or akka biqsingittoq. It's not a blizzard. So those are just a few weather terms. I'll give you one more. Again, this one depends on your region. For us, when it's raining, you would say nipaluktoq. So nipaluktoq means it's raining. And you could say nipalukpa, is it raining? And you could answer I nipaluktoq or akka nipalungittoq.